What, in your opinion, could buff Aggravate on spread in the future? I mean, there's a few things you can do. Aggravate doesn't really have a carry that's that good, right? The carries that are good in Aggravate teams aren't really good in Aggravate teams because they're good in Aggravate. They're just good in Aggravate teams because Fischl's doing half the team's DPS, right? We still don't have an Electro carry that actually has great synergy in Aggravate. I guess there's Sethos, but Sethos is hard as fuck to play properly, so I don't count him. So you could make an Electro carry that's actually supposed to be good for Aggravate. Or if you want to go for spread teams, I think what spread needs is Electro supports that are good for spread. There is no Electro support that's good for spread. We have Dendro supports that are good for Aggravate and Electro supports that are good for Aggravate. We don't have any Electro supports that are good for spread. Why is Sethos hard to play? Because there's a very large difference between Sethos with proper animation cancels and without them. The optimal combo for Sethos is N2W, so 2 attacks, and then walk forward to reset your animation string. Right? Because if you just spam normal attack, you'll get your third normal attack, the one where he does, and it's complete garbage because it's really slow. Right? It does more damage, but his motion value is like on his normal attacks is awful. What's good about his normal attacks during his burst is the damage you get from the burst. And the burst buffs your attacks the same amount for each attack, which means that you get 1 proc of burst damage on the N1, and then 2 procs on the N2, and then only 1 proc on the N3. And so even though it has a much higher scaling, it's just really, really bad to get there, right? And because of that, the optimal combo for Sethos is N2W. Oops. But doing good N2Ws versus doing bad ones is a pretty big difference. On top of that, there's a lot of adaptability in Sethos rotations because of his ability to do these enhanced charge shots that cost energy. His optimal rotations include a few charge attacks, but knowing when to use them can be difficult. There's also all the Sethos tech, like tax evasion, which I can't show because my ping is too low. But the energy consumed by the charge shot, right, is delayed by ping. So if you have high ping, you can do your charge shot and then use your burst before the energy from the charge shot gets consumed. So you effectively don't have to pay energy for the charge shot. There's a lot of stuff that goes into min-maxing Sethos rotations. When you play Sethos perfectly, he's actually a pretty strong carry. But if you're playing Sethos at an average level, he's kind of weak. But yeah, and then, like I said, right, when it comes to spread teams, right now the biggest problem with spread teams is not the carries. Like, Alhaitham is actually pretty, like, good all-around numbers-wise for a spread-focused carry. The problem is that you don't have a good 3rd and 4th slot in his teams, right? You got Alhaitham, you got Nahida, who's a pretty decent buffer, but you don't have good options after that. You don't have good shredders, you don't have good buffers, and you don't have good off-field damage dealers for spread teams. And so both your 3rd and your 4th slot in these teams are going to be kind of cope. Right? People often use Fischl, even though she's a lot worse in spread than in Aggravate, because you get a lot less A4 procs. Just because you don't have a lot of other options. Even without all those A4 procs, Fischl is still kind of better than Yai. There are actually teams of units that are designed well for spread. The problem is that those units do not have good numbers. But just design-wise, Tirnari and Yai work so well together. They just don't have the numbers to back it up. But because their synergy is so good, they're still decent teams. Despite the units themselves being pretty ass. What we need is Electro units that synergize with Alhaitham, as well as Yai synergizes with Tirnari. That's what we need for Spread to have great teams. Can you explain what Varesa's C1 does? Basically, Varesa has 3 different things that do plunge damage. She has her default plunge that happens after you E normally. She has the enhanced plunge that happens after you E with full Night Soul. And she has the burst plunge that happens when you do the mini burst like this. Right? By default, her Ascension 1 passive gives 50% more motion value, so increases the talent multiplier on her plunge attack for the first one by 50%. It increases the enhanced plunge by 180%, and it does not affect the mini burst plunge. Her Constellation 1 makes it so that you get the 180% to the enhanced plunge on all of your plunge damage instead of only on the enhanced one. So this is what plus 180%, this is plus 180%, and this is plus 180%. So you basically get 130% more motion value on your plunge that isn't enhanced, and 180% more motion value on the burst plunge. So it's a relatively good con. It's not that good because your motion value is already really high, right? Like, Varesa deals a lot of damage through a lot of different sources. Adding 130% to 418, right? It makes it do like 30% more damage-ish. Then this 732 is unaffected. And then this 724 goes to 904. But it doesn't affect the skill damage, it doesn't affect the charge attack damage. So it's the exact amount that it buffs is gonna vary. But it's generally in the upper single digit. In the best case scenario, low 2 digits, right? But like you have her charge attack, her E, charge attack, plunge, E2, C2, plunge 2, Q. Qui donne sens aux irresponsables? Ah, dites-nous qui tient. So 368. Okay, no. So the default plunge is 368 plus 50% from the Ascension passive. The E is 134.1. The E2, 191.5. The charge attack, 160.7. The C2, Fiery Passion charge attack, 166.8. And then the plunge 2, 552 plus 180. And then the Q, 724.8. Okay. And the amount you do of each of these depends a lot on your rotation, right? The default first rotation that most people will end up doing is 2 of these and 3 of these. C1 changes this to 180 and adds 180 to this. about a 11-12% increase. What did P2 turn from 552 to 732? Because of this. If Varesa is in the Fiery Passion, this ground impact is increased by 180% of her attack. This is the Ascension passive. But yeah. But you can end up doing different rotations based on a lot of different things, right? And if you do charge attacks, to get your plunge instead of your skill, right? You don't get that enhanced damage, that plus 180. And her rotations that chain together actually do these things. So, P without A1, or is it A4? I don't know, whatever. Right, so in that default rotation, it's about a 10% increase. But then, depending on when your buffs end up expiring, it can be a bit more, a bit less. Depending on your energy generation, you might only get 2 Qs instead of 3. So basically, it generally varies between like 8 and 12%-ish. C1 is worse every time you level your talents. If you don't level them, C1 is huge. True. If you have talent level 1 on everything on Varesa, the C1 is a much bigger difference. That's a good point. C1 is never better than R1 either. I actually think that for me, C1 is better than R1. Because I have R3 Lost Prayers.